Greetings! In this video, I'll show you how to replace the vacuum tubes in a Watchmaster WT ultrasonic cleaner. The Watchmaster WT was a highly respected cleaner back in the day, if not the king of cleaners. It was manufactured and sold by the Bulova Watch Company. I was introduced to an individual who refurbishes and resells these cleaners as a hobby/side gig. I bought this refurbished beauty for $1,281 inclusive of taxes and shipping. It was manufactured, he believes and I believe, sometime in the early 1970s. It cleans at 32 kilohertz, which is lower than the 40 kilohertz used in today's prosumer cleaners. The lower two cup positions are ultrasonic and are individually controlled. The cups are much smaller than the tanks used in even the smallest of today's ultrasonic cleaners, so you use much less cleaning fluid. The dryer position uses heat and spinning to dry the parts. After unpacking, I set it up and used it to clean parts from a Gruen 510 RSS movement that I'm presently working on. It worked great until it blew its fuse at the end of a cleaning cycle. Sometimes old electronics have spurious oddball electrical transients. I hoped that my new cleaner, quote unquote, didn't have an issue. So I replaced the fuse and used it again and crossed my fingers. This time the cleaning cycle was fine, but it blew its fuse at the end of the first rinse cycle. So I discussed this with the seller. The most likely cause was the vacuum tubes. Now, they're horizontally mounted in this unit versus vertically mounted in like an old television set. So when it's horizontally mounted, if a filament sags for any reason, it can cause an arc which would pop the fuse as well as maybe blow up the tube. The unit worked fine before he packed it for shipping. Now, his packaging for shipment was impeccable. But even so, vacuum tubes are fragile. And mine could have been the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of shipments that got dropped onto the airport tarmac and was jostled a little bit too much. Additionally, the two tubes in the Watchmaster WT need to be balanced. I'm not an electrical engineer, and I barely understand the concept of balanced vacuum tubes. The example frequently used online is in a tube-based amplifier where you have two channels, left and right. You want the left and right channels to be equally powered. So you used balanced tubes, one for each channel. The seller said that he used balanced tubes, but it's possible there was a slip-up in assembly and/or the tubes were faulty or marginal and/or they were jostled too much during shipment. All of this is to say, my plan of attack is to replace the tubes, insert a new fuse, and see if the problem goes away. The first thing to do is to remove all of the cups from the cleaner. Most of them still have fluid in them from when I last used it. So I'm removing each removable cup and suspending them on top of the mouths of mason jars. So those are the two ultrasonics, and then the dip cleaner, and then we have the dryer, and we have the side cups that are suspended off to the side of the unit. And then I remove the side clips, and so after doing that, well, then we have the base unit by itself. Now I'm going to install a fresh 8 amp slow blow fuse. These are the ones that I bought from thefuseshop.com. They're ceramic fuses. I bought 10 of them because, well, just because. The manufacturer schematics specify a 5 amp slow blow fuse. The seller uses an 8 amp slow blow fuse in all of his refurbished units. He says the units run fine with an 8 amp fuse, and he's refurbished about 150 some odd of these over the years. Naturally, I am leery of deviating from the manufacturer's specs, but I'm going with the seller on this unless something really, really bad happens. So I turn the unit over, I unscrew the feet, which will let me remove the base plate. The fuses are 6mm by 30mm fuses, and there are two fuse positions, one of which is a spare. I use a stick of pegwood to remove the blown fuse. Then I insert the new 8 amp slow blow ceramic fuse in the spare and live positions. So now internally there's a spare fuse within in the base. And that's it for the fuses. I then replace the bottom plate and the feet. As you can see, these are leveling feet. I don't care about their proper leveling setting now. I'll deal with that at the end of this task. Next step is to work on the tubes, and I get at them from the top side of the unit. So I remove the cover plate for the 2 lower positions, which are the ultrasonic positions. The heater unit is held in place with 2 sliding latches. So you slide the latches, both of them out, and then you can lift the heating unit off. Now this is a modular design, so the heating unit is attached to the main unit via well, basically looks almost like a zip cord. It's you know, a wire with a plug at the end, and so you reach in and you unplug the heating unit from the base unit. There you go, that's the plug, and it plugged into a socket on the I guess you'd call it the main board underneath. That's the underside of the heating unit there, and then you can set it aside. Great. So now you have the base unit without the heater, and you see there the bases of the 2 vacuum tubes. So now what you have to do is remove a tin plate and a baker plate to get at the vacuum tubes. And they are both held in place with a pair of wing nuts with lock washers. So you unscrew the wing nuts, you remove the lock washers, and then the tin plate and the baker plate can come off. One of the lock washers was a little tricky to get off because it had gotten caught under the lip of the hole for the screw. So I had to kind of jimmy around and pry it up. And beware of live demos. When I removed the right wing nut, I dropped it down into the into the guts of the unit. And so you'll see in a couple of seconds after I removed the baker plate and the tin plate, I had to turn the unit upside down to get the wing nut to drop out. Oopsie. That's the tin plate, and there's something which I guess is called the baker plate underneath it, and there you see the 2 vacuum tubes on the left, and you also see a big honkin' transformer on the right. There's electricity in this thing, and you need to respect it. So here you see the baker plate and the tin plate and the 2 lock washers and the 2 wing nuts, and those will go back on top of things when I'm done. And here you see the 2 vacuum tubes. They're mounted horizontally, as I said. First I was interested in the discoloration on one of them, and I thought that might be significant, but the seller told me no, that's not significant. The other thing you're going to notice is that these tubes are 2 different sizes, but they are supposed to be identical tubes, and I wondered what was up with that. So I removed the wire off the top of each tube, and then I pulled each tube out of its socket. Now, you know, this might not be the best personal style. I was tugging on the glass. I really should have tugged on the base, but I'm throwing these tubes away, so what the heck. Anyway, so I finally realized that. I thought, you know, instead of pulling on the glass, you should pull on the base. And so I tried wiggling to pull them out of the socket, and then I finally said, yeah, grab the base, and grabbing the base certainly worked a whole lot better. And here's the weird thing. These are 2 identical tubes. I looked at the part numbers on the side and they are identical. However, they're different sizes. I don't understand this. One is clearly taller than the other. I don't get it. The seller said, yeah, don't worry about it. That's, you know, irrelevant. I don't understand why a manufacturer would make 2 versions of the exact same part number that works the exact same way, and they're different sizes. This does not make sense to me, but I'm not a vacuum tube guy, so what the heck do I know? And so I put the 2 current vacuum tubes aside. And so now I go to insert the new vacuum tubes, which are identical. They are identical part numbers, and lo and behold, they are the same shape and size and height. So there you go. And these are match tubes. So I look on the base, and on the base, the sort of the central plug coming out of the base has a notch on it, and you line that up with the notch in the socket, and then you basically press in. And so I mounted both vacuum tubes in and attached the wires to the top. If I understand things right, each one of these vacuum tubes is equal to 1 transistor, right? That sort of blows my mind. Now these, of course, aren't equivalent to CMOS or NMOS or ECOL transistors. These would be equivalent to, I guess, power transistors. So they'd be beefier than what you'd find in a microprocessor integrated circuit. But still, aren't each one of these equal to 1 transistor? It sort of blows my mind to take a look at the bulk and the fragility and the manufacturing components, the cost of putting them all together up close. I mean, yeah, I knew what a vacuum tube was, but I haven't handled one in decades. And so just handling these things, looking at them going, huh, wow, God, these are huge. And they also run hot and all that stuff. So kind of fun. Kind of fun to actually be up close and personal with old technology. So I inserted the new tubes. I plugged in the wires at the top, and then I put the base unit back together. I put on the baker plate and the tin plate and screwed them down, and I reassembled things. My thinking was that I would run the test with the base unit completely assembled, right? I mean, because I needed to have the ultrasonic cups in, and so I decided to, well, let me just go reassemble everything. After doing that, though, I talked to the seller, again, just in one of my conversations, and he pointed out that the right thing to do would be, or the better thing to do, would be to run the test with the unit still open. So if there was arcing, if there was a flash from the tubes, or if something else was going on, I could actually see it and record it. And so after doing all this, I wound up taking it half apart again, and you'll see that in the next clip. So I've moved everything back into my office, and I have the base unit with the top stuff removed. You can see the exposed vacuum tubes and the giant transformer on the right. What I'm going to do is insert a cleaner cup, the cleaner cup I should say, into the left ultrasonic position, and the rinse cup into the right ultrasonic position without any cover plating, and then I'm going to test the unit and be able to see what's going on with the vacuum tubes. And the cleaner cup and the rinse cup contain cleaning and rinsing solutions. I didn't want to throw them out. They were perfectly good. So yeah, this is a live test with no protection. So it's only electricity. What's the worst that could happen? And so here we go. I'm going to go do a test. And so here's the start of the test. I set the switch to, or make sure the switch is set to clean, and I set the right selector to wash, and I turn on the timer, and the unit turns on. The fan, which you can kind of see rotating just right north of the timer switch, is turning around, and we see the vacuum tubes heating up. Yay, we see the glow. At this point, I turned off the overhead lights in my office, and I videoed the entire test. So I'm going to now speed this up because, spoiler, nothing untoward happened. Everything worked normally. It is very interesting, I found interesting, to see the tubes light up and to see the stuff glowing inside the tubes. It's, you know, there's power there. I did a 6-minute wash, followed by a 6-minute rinse, followed by a 2-minute wash. With the original tubes, there was a blown fuse at the end of a cleaning run, and then the second time I tried it to do a rinse, and it blew at the end of the rinse run. This time, with a clean and a rinse and then another clean, nothing blew. So the tubes ran fine, everything was great. What else can I tell you? I don't know, it's sort of uneventful, which is great, right? I mean, it's actually what you want to have happen. You don't want fireworks. You're going to see during the speed up part here, me zooming in a bit on the vacuum tubes, and it was a very impressive little light show. And so the test was successful. With the test completed, it's time to reassemble things. So I pick up and remove and set aside the cleaning cup and the rinse cup. I take the baker plate and put it in position. I put the tin plate over it, and then I attach the 2 lock washers and their wing nuts. I pick up the heating unit, the heating module, I should say, heating module. Remember, there's a plug that has to go into a socket in the base unit. And so I plug it in, and then I position the heating module in its spot on the top of the base unit. It sort of fits in two runners, I guess you'd say, and it slides in, and then you, after it's in position, you secure it by sliding the two latches inward, and it's now locked into the base unit. I then put on the grill that covers the two lower ultrasonic positions. Here I ran into a little bit of a snag. It turns out that I had a small alignment problem of the baker plate and the tin plate with the hole underneath it that the transducer had to go into. So it was a real easy fix. All I did was loosen up the wing nuts, and you see me sticking my fingers in the hole there and just sliding the two plates forward just a little bit so they lined up with the hole. Tighten things up again, put the grill cover back on, and then the cleaning and the rinsing cups slid in no problem. And then I put in the drip rinse cup in position. In its position, I've got the heater cup in its position. I spun it around to make sure that there was nothing rubbing underneath. And then I have the two side clips which hang off of the side of the unit. I attach them. Cute little thing, it just hangs. These things plug into the ventilation holes on the side of the unit. It just takes up a couple of holes, but it gives you storage space for additional cups, for an additional rinse cup, and in my case, a third rinse cup. And on the left side, I have a cup that I've dedicated for using Simple Green 50/50 water mixture with Simple Green to do very, very simple cleaning of cases. And I just kind of keep it out there. And that's it. I am done. I have a working, fixed Watchmaster WT. And that's all I have for you today. Till next time, take care.